Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jennifer, and you are listening to the Ego Next Door podcast. Today, we are going to explore a topic that often goes undiscussed, but is extremely important for people who have experienced any kind of trauma. Taking up space, prioritizing your needs, setting healthy boundaries, and fully claiming who you are. If you are a survivor of abuse, you have probably faced moments where others have questioned your story, your character, or even implied that you somehow deserved what happened to you. Well, this episode serves as a reminder for this crucial truth. You do not owe anyone your decisions, thoughts, story, explanations, or answers to their questions. You do not have to cancel yourself out to exist in this world. Your life is yours alone, and taking accountability and ownership is essential for your growth and healing. In fact, it is your pathway to becoming a healthier and freer version of yourself. Prioritizing your own needs can feel impossible. Abuse often leaves you with shattered confidence, non-existent self-esteem, diminished self-worth, and a level of empowerment that feels sub-zero. Of course, starting over feels overwhelming, especially when you have been conditioned to minimize yourself and stay invisible to avoid harm. But the truth is, you don't need to keep hiding. You are entitled to take space. You deserve to exist unapologetically and to call your space your own. Yet, as people conditioned to dislike ourselves and to please others, it is common to internalize the dehumanization inflicted upon us. After trauma, we may even come to see ourselves as less than human. When we look in the mirror, we may not even recognize the person staring back. It can feel like our brain betrays us, making us disappear not only from the situation that caused our pain, but from the world itself. This can be related to depersonalisation and dissociation. In fact, depression, anxiety, and severe dissociative symptoms are often found in people who have experienced or witnessed physical trauma. Formally, dissociation is defined as a disruption of the normal integration of experience. Nevertheless, researchers in psychology now agree that all humans dissociate, and much of our dissociativeness is adaptive. Some would even say that dissociation is a way of organizing information. However, the difference between everyday dissociation and trauma-related dissociation is that trauma causes it to become excessive and disruptive, leading to maladaptive patterns. You might also wonder, what makes trauma trauma? Well, according to specialists, what makes a situation traumatic is not just an interruption of information processing, but also the activation of a maladaptive process, which results in considerable stress symptoms, often considered atypical to the conventional human experience. These events are often seen as unpredictable, hence triggering a response of intense fear, helplessness, and horror. So, while it might seem like your brain is working against you, it is actually trying to protect you. In the face of abuse, the brain often resorts to survival mechanisms like dissociation or even depersonalisation. Understanding these mechanisms is crucial for healing. Recognizing that your brain's response was an act of protection can help you start rebuilding your sense of self and moving toward recovery. In the face of trauma, dissociation has incredible effects. It allows us to compartmentalize, thus protecting us. In a traumatic event, dissociating allows us to separate but remain simultaneously aware that what is happening is wrong while keeping our response intact. Dissociation acts as a protective mechanism, preserving functionality and offering an evolutionary advantage. This allows you to detach from immediate pain, psychological distress, and enables you to continue functioning in dangerous environments. These responses are ways of coping with extreme stress, even though they can leave lasting scars. Trauma frequently causes people to lose touch with and detach from themselves, resulting in psychological divisions interfering with a person's holistic and cognitive capacities. This is one of the main reasons why traumatized individuals often struggle with being present, self-loving, and self-accepting. Hence, ignored and left untreated, dissociation can create people-pleasing behavior. This has long-term effects on identity, the necessity for external validation, hyper-awareness of social cues, avoidance of confrontation, and prioritizing other people's needs over your own. Dissociation occurs when your mind detaches from reality, helping you mentally escape an unbearable situation, impairing the mutuality between internal world and external reality. Depersonalisation, on the other hand, makes you feel disconnected from your own identity, as if you're observing yourself from the outside. It is like a sense of disconnection with bodily parts to the extent that you may feel as though you are observing the world from behind a glass. Depersonalization often occurs with derealisation symptoms, which makes the outside world seem foreign as well, with people around you feeling like performers and the outside world looking two-dimensional. Trauma affects not just the mind, but also the body. Many trauma survivors experience physical reactions, including brain fog, fatigue, and physical numbness. Others struggle with chronic pain, headaches, or stomach issues. These symptoms are often overlooked, but they can be long-term effects of trauma. Traumatic experiences put the body in a state of high alert, potentially trapping the nervous system in survival mode. This can affect everything from sleep to digestion. Feeling both extremely exhausted and hyperactive at the same time can also be a sign that your body is still processing past events. These are the ways your body shields you from the overwhelming emotions caused by abuse. However, while these responses help you survive the moment, they can also make it difficult to reconnect with yourself and the world afterward. Imagine your brain as a security system. When you experience trauma, your brain's alarm system, which is controlled by the amygdala, kicks in, flooding you with fear. However, if the threat feels too overwhelming, your brain switches into a sort of power-saving mode, shutting down certain functions to help you get through what is happening. This is why dissociation seems like you are checking out. Your brain is attempting to protect you from experiencing too much, too quickly. It is not a weakness, but rather a survival instinct. The problem arises if this response remains long after the danger has disappeared, making it difficult to reconnect with yourself and your environment around you. Unresolved traumatic experiences can create an altered sense of self, and a breakdown in the ability to harmonize both internal and exterior realities. According to research, traumatized people exhibit greater anxiety traits, more pessimism, and lower self-esteem than non-traumatized people. This, of course, may lead to the infamous people-pleasing. If you have been conditioned to stay small, taking up space might sound abstract or even meaningless. It's the act of reclaiming your right to exist as a whole person. It means recognizing your humanity with all its flaws and strengths and understanding that you are just as important as anyone else. Not more, not less, but equal. This realization can be heavy. Abuse teaches us to silence ourselves and to accept that our needs and experiences are secondary to others. Reclaiming your space is a revolutionary act. It's about giving yourself permission to live unapologetically and to reject the idea that your worth is tied to other people's approval or validation. Most people are aware of the fight or flight response, but there are two others that are not talked about nearly as much. Those are the freeze and fawn response. If you have ever felt responsible for other people's emotional response or the obligation to say yes to something when deep down you wanted to say no, that may be the fawn response speaking through you. This is the infamous people-pleasing. Instead of fighting, creating distance, or standing your ground, you go above and beyond to keep other people happy. And people pleasing is not just about being too nice or too caring. It's a survival strategy. People who grew up with emotionally unstable parents or in situations where advocating for oneself resulted in rejection or punishment are likely to experience this. In childhood, it may have kept you safe, but in adulthood, it can leave you feeling drained, invisible, and disconnected from your own needs. And just as you may not fully realize that you are limiting yourself for other people often have no idea that it's happening. It's not your fault, and it's not theirs either. It is simply a survival instinct. However, as an adult, you have the power to recognize it and start honoring your own needs. One of the biggest barriers to taking up space is the fear of judgment that people who have been passive for too long often face. When you present yourself in a way that gives people the freedom to use you and perceive you as always available, it conditions others to see you that way. Therefore, if suddenly you begin setting boundaries, many people will not like it. It is change, and humans are known for being creatures of habit. This reaction is escalated if, in the midst of it all, you disclose something vulnerable about yourself. If people are used to taking permissions and intruding, they will likely do so as a reaction to your presence. If you are not used to establishing boundaries and people are used to seeing you as permissible, then they will not think twice about probing. But remember, you don't have to explain. You don't even have to tell your story or make people accept or understand you. Doing that is seeking external validation, and seeking external validation is counterproductive to the quest of being less of a people pleaser and more of a confident human who owns their story rather than forcing others to own it for you. For example, if you share your story, people may quiz you, asking for details to determine if your experience is valid enough to deserve their empathy. This kind of interrogation is deeply harmful. It shifts the focus from empathy to judgment and forces you to justify your pain. This is when you must remind yourself that nobody is entitled to the details of what you endured. Your story belongs to you. If someone approaches your experience with skepticism rather than understanding, that is their failing, not yours. You don't have to exhaust yourself explaining or proving anything, especially when doing so detracts from your healing process. Think of it this way. You wouldn't question someone on why they choose a particular meal or how they spend their money. So why do you give space for people to feel entitled to pry into your life? It is a violation of boundaries, and it is important to recognize it as such. So, instead of giving people space to pry, take that space and give it to yourself. Setting boundaries is one of the hardest but most rewarding steps in reclaiming your space. For survivors, this can feel especially daunting, as abuse often involves repeated violations of boundaries. Watching other people cross those lines while feeling helpless can leave you unsure of how to defend yourself. The act of setting boundaries can feel alien and even frightening at first, but it is a crucial step for healing. It involves learning to say no and to assert your needs without apology. For example, after my own negative life experiences, I found myself trying to over-explain myself to someone who had known me for years and had already heard all the stories of the dark things I had gone through. Instead of responding with empathy, they started interrogating me, questioning my experience as if I were on trial. Why were they quizzing me? Were they trying to support me or just deciding if my story was worthy of their empathy? Their reaction made me realize something important. I didn't owe them an explanation. I didn't owe them anything. This was a wild realization because my natural tendency was to keep answering, keep showing proof, keep convincing them. But instead, when they kept pressing, I told them directly that they needed to stop and that they had no right to question my experiences. If they believed me, fine. If not, that was their issue, not mine. This was one of the hardest things I have ever done because I have always been a people pleaser, but it was also one of the most empowering moments of my life. If setting boundaries feels unnatural or even terrifying, that is because many of us were never taught on how to do it. In fact, we might have been taught the very opposite of it, how to appease to others and forget ourselves. The good news is that it's never too late to learn. Boundaries act as a magical fence around your energy, time, and values, letting others know what is and isn't acceptable to you. Boundaries help you protect your well-being and foster healthier relationships with others. If you can relate to this, maybe using the following real-life application examples can be helpful when someone pushes your boundaries. First, recognize your needs. Ask yourself, what drains me? What makes me feel resentful or uncomfortable? These feelings are signals that a boundary is needed. After that, learn to communicate clearly. Instead of over-explaining, try a simple statement like, I can't take that on right now, or I appreciate your concern, but I'm not comfortable discussing that. Or, I value our relationship, but I need to respect my limits too. You don't owe anyone a long justification. And finally, enforce your boundaries without feeling guilty. Expect pushback. If people are used to you always saying yes, they might resist at first. That doesn't mean your boundary is wrong. It means that it's working. The more you practice, the more natural it will seem. Fake it till you make it, and remember that setting boundaries doesn't mean you are selfish or self-centered. It means you care about yourself. Taking up space and asserting your boundaries are transformative acts. Each time you stand firm, you strengthen your confidence and rebuild your self-worth. It's not just about protecting yourself from further harm. It's about reclaiming your right to exist fully. When you take up space, you give yourself permission to be seen and heard. You let go of the fear of being too much and embrace your value as a human being. This process can be challenging, but it's an essential part of healing. Your voice matters and your experiences matter. Reclaiming your space is not just about healing either. It's about thriving. It's about recognizing that you have the right to live as your authentic self without fear or shame. It's about rejecting the narratives that told you to shrink yourself instead of embracing your humanity in all its complexity. Reclaiming your space entails more than just saying no to others. It's about giving yourself permission by saying yes to yourself. It's about acknowledging that your needs deserve to be addressed. So, when you finally begin enforcing your boundaries, you send a message to others, and, more importantly to yourself, that you deserve to be here. And this is why boundaries are so powerful. They stop you from shrinking down and push you to stand up. On the next episode, we will continue this topic of taking up space by turning it inwards. We will explore the topic of intimacy, pleasure, connections, and healthy physical relationships with yourself and others. Thank you for listening to the Ego Next Door podcast. See you soon, and I hope you have a wonderful day. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to hear more, don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Ego Next Door. And if you would like to support my work, consider becoming a patron to my Patreon creator page at Jennifer Hachia. The Ego Next Door podcast is presented solely for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The content here is not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, or medical treatment of a qualified healthcare provider. Reliance on any information provided here is at your own risk. If you or someone you know is in crisis or experiencing suicidal thoughts, please reach out immediately to someone who can help right away. Call your national emergency services or go to the nearest hospital.